All right, here I'm joined by Emmet Peppers again. This is part three in our conversation that's taking place on Monday night, December 7th. I'll link to the part one and part two of this conversation. And in this section, I wanted to ask Emmet and discuss kind of our first various kind of adventures or forays into investing, but pre-stock, kind of like, in our maybe kid era or teen era, to see what kind of lessons we might have learned or picked up, because I think a lot of times our early childhood experiences they actually do impact us a lot more than maybe, some people realize. So,
Yeah.
yeah, when was your first kind of foray into investing or making money or, gambling, risking, whatever?
Yeah. I mean, I think my first lesson on kind of markets and psychology is I don't know when I learned it exactly, but one story I know my dad always tells of me, and my dad's a really good storyteller, so hopefully I can tell this. But when I was probably 6 years old, and my older brother was like 8 years old, and my dad had some like car, and my brother and I were arguing in the back seat about something, and so we were arguing so much. He said he had to pull over the car and ask us like, "What are you guys arguing about? This has got to stop." And a family friend for a recent holiday had given us like this like pinball machine recently, like a small pinball machine, but it was electronic. It was kind of fancy. It wasn't like a real pinball, but it was for a kid at that time. It was pretty cool. And my older brother tells my dad, he says, Emmett doesn't want to charge our friends 25 cents to play the pinball machine, and I do. And I said, no, I just don't want to charge them 25 cents the first time, first two or three times. Then I want to charge them. And so my dad kind of like gives that analogy of how good of a salesman or how much I understood like psychology is like you get them hooked, right? Letting them use it for free. And
Mm-hmm.
then they want to pay. If you try to charge them 25 cents up
Mm-hmm.
front, they wouldn't even bother playing. So that was just like an interesting, I guess I was thinking of market dynamics at an early age for some reason. But my kids definitely, I mean, I try to instill similar lessons as my parents instilled in me too, like learning how to work for money, do various chores for $1 or $2, and I did that a lot when I was a kid, and it taught me a sense of work ethic and what money is, I think too. What about you? Do you have any stories that stick out about when you were a kid growing up?
Um, yeah, I think the two things was like when I was in sixth grade, we did like a stock competition where we took the newspaper and we picked different stocks and we tracked them for like a month or so. We had a competition in
Okay.
class, and I was like fascinated by like how you could make money by purely just like picking stocks and see them go up or down, right? So I remember I was like looking at the newspaper every day, and it's funny that that habit actually kind of carried on throughout like high school. Like I would just actually look through the business section and often look at different stocks, but
Hmm.
on the flip side, it felt so frustrating because I'm like, how in the world do you just pick random names, and hope that it just increases, And it was
Yeah.
just like, it was just the most frustrating experience. I think it was overall, I'd rate that as like a very poor, like a D to F investing experience. The other experience that comes to mind is I, my parents wouldn't give me like much allowance or anything, there was
Hmm.
like, I had to figure something out. And so I had a paper route, and this paper route was just like a gruesome thing, man. I think it's like
Yeah.
it borders like on like child abuse in some ways. Because
I had a friend who did that paper route in like cold winters. It was
no,
awful.
no,
I did it with
yeah,
him once.
seriously,
Yeah.
when it's raining and it's like freezing, and you have to wake up at 5:30 in the morning, right? And you have to deliver all these newspapers, and then you have to go to school. Like it's
Yeah.
yeah, but yeah. So I'd wake up 5:30 in the morning. It'd be pitch black and freezing, and I would just like deliver these newspapers, and it was like the craziest experience. But I did it because I needed to make my $100 or $150 per month
Yeah.
because I had to invest in baseball cards. Right, that was
Baseball card.
that
Yeah.
was my route to becoming rich. So
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
I make 100 bucks per month, invest it all into baseball cards, I'm gonna be like filthy rich, right? Because these
Yeah.
baseball cards will appreciate in value like
Yeah. I remember that. I used to invest
immensely.
in it.
And I had my whole like baseball like it was like It was a book to calculate the value of every single baseball card. Like you could look it up and
Yeah, I
stuff.
remember those books. Yeah, and you
Yeah,
get the
yeah,
newer, updated one every six
exactly.
months or
Yeah,
3 months, and you're like, oh, it's going up in value.
exactly. So I was like religiously into this, right? And I was like,
Yeah,
I was really into like sports too. So I was like watching baseball, listening to talk radio and all this stuff, and
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
picking up all these players and going to all these flea markets. That was like my pastime, you know, going to flea markets, picking up the best cards. And
yeah,
like I remember like, you know, kind of treasuring my best cards, my rookie cards, you know, all this stuff,
yeah.
thinking that I'm
Ken Griffey Jr. rookie card
I
was a
yes,
big
I
deal if
had
you
Ken
had
Griffey
that.
Juniors, like a bunch
Uh,
of yeah, all this stuff, and
yeah.
and like kind of like thinking, oh, I'm becoming rich slash, you know, growing my wealth, etc. And then like I remember I went to sell them like after like 3 years of working like
I had the
super
same
hard.
experience. Yeah,
Serious.
I was just gonna tell a story about the same experience. Yeah, go on. I want to hear yours. It's
And
probably the
I
same.
had all these cards. And I'm like, okay, I'm ready to like cash them in.
Cash out.
Exactly, right?
The
Like
book says it's worth this much.
exactly like how many thousands of dollars I'm gonna get or something. And like I even had these like a big box of like 1955 tops or something. They were just like
Yeah,
really old cards too. So I brought all this stuff to this shop, right? And I
yeah.
laid them all down. I go, okay, I want to cash these all out. And they offered me like $50 or something. And I was like so devastated because I'm like, what are you
Yeah,
talking about? The book value on this is like thousands of dollars, right? It's like,
yeah,
how can you be offering me $50, right?
yeah,
And it was just like almost like life shattering in a sense, you know?
yeah,
It was just
yeah.
like, yeah, wait. Like, so what was your story? I'm curious.
Same kind of thing, collecting all these baseball cards. Like I remember the cards they used to give you the gum in it, and after a while, you don't even eat the gum; you just go right to the cards. Tops. Yeah, just tops. Yeah, those are the first real brand. And spent a lot of my allowance on that, or money I could make on that for a while, and collecting all those cards, organizing them. You trade them with your friends. You look at the books. You kind of calculate your fortune of baseball cards, and then I tried to bring a couple of valuable cards to the town baseball shop, card shop that sold baseball cards. Same kind of thing. It was like a card that was worth like $30 or $40, and he was like, "I'll give you $2 for it." I was like, "What?" I was like, "What do you mean? Like I can get maybe a couple new packs of baseball cards, but I'm supposed to get 30 or $40. Look at the book." And he's like, "Nope. I mean, that's what I'll pay you. Take it or leave it." And I was like, "I'm leaving." And so I went to another card shop down the street. There was like two in my town. I was like, "I'm gonna go to this other one. He's gonna be," and same kind of thing. Except I think that guy didn't even want to buy it. He was just like, "No, I don't want to buy it." I was like, "What do you mean?" He probably just didn't want to take advantage of a kid or something. And I was like 10 years old at the time, and it was like life, like you said, shattering to my baseball collecting career. And I was just like, oh, I guess I'm gonna have to hold these for a long, long time until someone will buy them one day. And yeah, I don't know what happened to those cards, but they're long gone.
Yeah. It's like when I think about like those type of experiences, I actually like feel like um poor investing experiences tend to be like um they hurt people's kind of view of investing, right? And I think like the first experiences you have with investing, it taints or shapes a lot of your ideas of what it is. And I think a lot of people give up on investing because they've had a poor experience. And in a lot of ways, I think the the investing game is rigged against the regular investor in most areas. Like for example, if you go to a casino, like it's going to be like rigged against you. And even if like you do have some skills, which most people don't, it's still
Yeah.
like I mean I don't know. You're not going to become like
No. Yeah.
yeah.
You're not gonna make
There's
a fortune.
exactly. I mean
You might get lucky, like hitting the lottery, but you have to
yeah.
know, like, you're just going there to get lucky. You're not going there like use skill to win money.
Exactly. And I mean, same thing with whatever baseball cards. And I feel like in some ways it's a little bit similar with like conventional type of investing in some ways. I feel like because we've gone through a long bull market,
Yeah.
especially the past 10 years, people have such a idealized view of investing, um, just generally in the stock market. And that's been a generally positive experience. But I feel like if we do go through, you know, an extended downturn or sideways motion, I feel like a lot of people will just drop out in terms of being interested in investing because it just doesn't tap into like a system where you have the advantage, you know?
Yeah.
And that's where I feel like like for example, my kids, if they ever are interested in investing, I want to introduce them and tap them into a way to invest or to do business in a way where it's to their advantage. Like the odds are for them in a way.
Hmm.
You know, they
Hmm.
have so they can have that experience. Like, oh wow, this is a business. You know, oh this
Yeah,
is investing. Like they catch that, like
yeah.
that the potential of it, right? And I feel like a lot of times like people drop out after a couple tries because with regular investing or investing that isn't, let's say, geared toward your odds, I feel like they feel it's capped out and they think they generalize that experience across all types of investing. So I'm curious for you, how did you break out of that type of let's say more
Hmm.
limited whatever early investing experiences, and what kind of opened your mind to investing in a way that is you feel like the odds are for you.
Yeah, yeah. So I've always been fascinated by the stock market and how it works. Like a big game, like I had a similar class in like seventh or eighth grade with picking stocks, and it was my first kind of experience to like this new game of investing. And I started realizing like you can make money playing a big game that's like in your favor. Because I realized the stock market one of the things you learn is the stock market generally goes up like 5 or 7% a year on average or whatever. It's like this, and if you pick the right stocks, you make a lot. Like back then, like IBM was big or Kodak or whatever. Like and and so I was really fascinated. I didn't really understand much of how it works. It's like a very complex game for a kid to understand, obviously. And so for like I think it was like my 13th or 14th birthday, I asked my dad for stocks, and he opened up like a minor, a small account with his brokerage firm for like minors that he was and bought mutual funds in it. And I was like, what are mutual funds? And like it was like a whole it was complex for me to try to understand what that is, like a pooled investment vehicle, lots of funds. And I just like, okay, so I'm not picking stocks, I guess. It wasn't as fun to me, but I let it go and I saw it go up over time. And then when I was like 17 or 16, I cashed out of it to spend that money on things I shouldn't be spending money on. But that was an interesting early experience. It had risen, significantly over those 3 or 4 years, that investment. And so I had a positive initial experience a little bit there, but I didn't really understand it or how it went up or anything at the time, mutual funds. And then when I was 22 or 21 or 22, and I learned about more about investing in college in a couple classes, which were really interesting to me, and I got more interested, but I didn't actually have any monetary experience in the markets again until I was like 22 when I had my first job at UBS Investment Bank. That was my first finance job. That first job was off. I was sorting bins of returned mail for the first month as an hourly, 15 hours, $15 an hour worker. But then when I got put on like computers to do other data entry stuff, I started talking to other back office coworkers, and we all wanted to get to the trading floor because that's where like the action was, like that's where the big money's made. Everyone wants to be a trader, that's who makes a lot of money. And so I started just experimenting and opening up like an E-Trade account and started investing in a couple stocks. I think United Airlines was about to go bankrupt, and I saw it like at $1 a share or something. It's like, oh, that's so cheap. I want to buy. I didn't even understand what market caps were.
Hmm.
Like back then, you don't know. I think I bought XM satellite radio for like $3. I thought it was cheap. I got lucky that it went up, but I didn't, understand the concept of what a market cap is versus the stock price, for example. So along the way, I got lucky a few times. I lost, like the United Airlines went bankrupt, and I lost that investment, like a few $100 on that. I made, you know, $1,000 on off of $100 on satellite radio or whatever. So just experiential learning from failures and successes over time. I started learning more, reading more, but I didn't really think of it differently um, as like a real vehicle to transform my life until I started working at Interactive Brokers, and that was in 2006. Actually, right before Interactive Brokers, I tried to do day trading, and I thought I could scalp and day trade for 6 months and buying and selling stocks for anywhere from like 2 seconds to 2 minutes. Trying to get a quick buck on a price moving up and down. Um, and that didn't work out well for me. So I ended up working at Interactive Brokers, and And then I kind of feel like I saw a lot of different investment strategies of different types of traders or investors because I was supporting institutional clients using our trading systems and walking them through how to do certain trades they told me they wanted to do and why they wanted to do it. And you just pick up through osmosis what their strategies are. And, some of them are like vol trading is super interesting, but to me, it's kind of a fancy synthetic product to trade, like you're buying and selling volatility in a stock, using delta hedging with options, so there's lots of interesting strategies people do, and just really fascinated me. And I started realizing like maybe there's a way I can take the best of these strategies and figure out how to, transform my own financial situation on a personal investing level. So that's sort of when I got the first idea or taste of like, this might not just be a hobby. Maybe I could turn it into like a real difference maker for me.
Interesting.
Kind
Yeah.
of a long story, but that kind of
Yeah.
summarizes it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
How about
Um,
you?
yeah. For me, I think my interest is a little bit kind of through kind of business avenue where like in high school I was fascinated by business, and I was doing this club. It was like some Future Business Leaders of America club where you actually had competitions where you came up with business plans like on the spot and presented it, and we went to some national competitions and stuff, and I was kind of fascinated by the concept of business. And but I took a different route after college, and I was headed more to like a nonprofit route where I felt like I was really impacted by, I think, by the needs of the world, and especially those who like were at the fringe, the hardest places. And but after college, my dad actually said, "Hey, you guys should try some investing in the stock market. It's like," and so he gave my brothers and he gave each of us basically about $10,000 and said, "Hey, invest it, learn." But he didn't give
Mm,
us any like other, you know, any other guidance,
yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
this was like 1999 or so. So I set up my account and I said, okay, what I'll do is every $10,000 I gain, I'll give away 5,000 for some really charitable purpose or something. And I remember I picked Yahoo because I'm like, this stock is going to the moon, and I was really a big believer in the internet. I thought all this stuff was big, and
Yeah.
so I remember I hit like 20,000 within like a few months, right? Maybe like less, it's like a month or
Yeah.
two.
Yeah.
So I gave away
Wow.
like 5,000. I took out 5,000. So I was like, whoa, this is awesome, right? And then I went from 15 to like 30, like pretty soon after, just another couple months. This is all like
Yeah.
in this first year. And so I
Yeah.
took out another 5,000 and gave it away. And so I'm like, wow, this is easy, It's like, and then my 25,000 went up to like 35,000. And I was like, okay, just wait for 40,000. I'll take another 5,000, right? And
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then from 35,000, it just like tanked. And this is when the dot-com bubble burst,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
everything just started to tank. And my $35,000 became like $10,000 within like a short period of time, a couple
Mm,
months. And I pulled that 10,000 just to save the 10,000. I was like, oh, okay, I just want to save the principal and stuff.
yeah.
And and it struck me as like kind of like too. I didn't have a grasp of like I felt like it was out of my control, the price movements.
Mm,
I didn't have a sense of it. And so I kind of went on my way, and I started a nonprofit. I started to travel the world. I started to you know, like I would hang out at like basically like I'd spend my time at like drug rehab centers in downtown LA where I would just counsel people and hang out with people. I take people to Africa, the Middle East, to parts of Asia where it's like the poorest people, and we would do different projects and stuff. And I was doing that, and I felt like we were doing a lot of stuff and helping people, but I felt like something was limited about like what we could do. There was something about a lack of resources that I felt like something was lacking. And during that time, I was like noticing business everywhere
hmm
I went. And even like I would spend time in these foreign countries. I spent like probably half of my 20s in foreign countries. But
Wow.
I would see business just so vibrant and such a crucial part of society, even when like there's so many needs out there. And I'm like, there's something about business that I think needs to be transformed, that it's like powerful force, but it needs to be connected to the needs of society as well. And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I started to like just read voraciously a bunch of business books. And when I got married in 2007 or so, that's where I'm like, yeah, I think we should try to do some business and investing. And I think we should try to, you know, grow resources in a significant way.
Mm-hmm.
And our big problem was we just had like we didn't have many resources to grow.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It was just like we're just like
Starting out
yeah,
small.
starting
Yeah.
out. And so I spent a year kind of just developing investment philosophy, and that's when we started our iPhone, Android, our app business basically in 2008 or so. And that's when and that kind of created a problem for us. After a few years, we had a lot of savings that was just accruing that I didn't know how to really spend back into the business the right way.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I'm like, okay, like, what do I do with these savings? And I'm like, I've got to find a way to grow them in a significant manner. And so that was kind of the genesis. But what's interesting was I had this intuitive feel like, because I saw the power of business in so many countries and cultures and societies, I understood that I'm not going to invest for small incremental gains, because I've seen like the
Yeah.
exponential growth of business,
Mm-hmm.
and so I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, I need to catch that exponential. I understood the essence of business, and so in some ways, like with investing, I've never thought in terms of like percent gains per year. Like that doesn't really register my brain. I've always thought in like X's, like 2x, 3x,
Mm-hmm.
5x,
Mm-hmm.
10x, like reproduction. Like that's
Yeah.
always like made
Yeah.
sense to me, Like I
Yeah.
have a certain amount, double, triple, 10x,
How many
whatever.
years to double it, or how many years to
Exactly.
10x
Yeah.
it? Yeah.
Yeah. This
And
whole
that's
thing of like
20% a year.
that 5% a year or 15% a year gains, it's like kind of, it doesn't really catch the essence of, I think, the reproductive nature, the
Yeah.
exponential nature of business, right? And that's what I think I learned in my 20s by traveling and, seeing the world. And that's what I carried on, into my investing, is kind of tapping into that. And that's what kind of let me discern when I see investing philosophies and books where they're just talking about 5%, 10% gains and all this stuff. And
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
just like, there's something, they don't get it, They're
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
not really
Yeah.
tapping into it. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, for me, I think you kind of see what's out there, and it kind of inspires you to kind of come up with your own investing philosophy, and you saw it by seeing the world and so forth. And for me, when I saw all these different investing strategies, I was helping folks use the interactive brokers platform use to do. I kind of got to understand, these investing, like what these investing strategies are about, long short equity, global macro event, event driven, corporate action, special situation strategy, and I felt like the most of these investors don't make that much, most of them don't do well, like over the long run, some do. But I realized it was kind of like, you know, when you learn Santa Claus isn't real as a kid, you're kind of like let down, like for me, it was like over the few years, my first few years with the firm, and I saw that most of these firms don't make a lot of money. They don't do that well. It was like a letdown. Like what? Like you can't make. And it was also from 2006 to 2008 crashed and all that. That's when I started working there. But then even after the crash, it's hard to find people that make a significant amount of money consistently, and so it was kind of a letdown. And I thought, like, I have to rethink this. Like, I have to come up with my own investing thesis. And I did remember there was like one, there was one fund I knew of that during the time of Apple's great rise in 2010 to or 2011, 2012, somewhere around that time, this fund went from like and it was small startup hedge funds typically at the firm, and that worked there or that used the systems a lot. And this one fund went from like 2 or 3 million or 5 million up to like 30 million in like a matter of like weeks or a couple
Wow.
months. And I was like, it caught my eye. I was like, what's this guy doing? How did that happen?
Mhm.
And it turns out it was like very options related. Buying calls on stocks that were related to suppliers of Apple or something like that were going up in conjunction with that. So buying calls on Apple, essentially their suppliers, at the right time when the stock's hitting these super moves.
Mhm.
And so that kind of stuck in my head, like, all right, if I can figure out a way to buy calls on stocks like that at the right time, then I can find like a 10x return maybe if I'm lucky. And that's kind
Mhm.
of early on inspired me. And then there was another client that is pretty well known to people, but I'm not naming any. I can't name, but this client's done very well over many years and is well known. And I'm like, what's their strategy? What's their secret? And it's really boring. It's just buy and hold.
Mhm.
Buy and hold a few instrumental stocks and hold them for like 5 or 10 years, and you make a lot of money on the few that you pick that are really good. And that's not as fun to me. I came from day trading in 2006. That was more fun, like clicking the buttons, trading all the time, trying to and and so I tried to I guess that sort of helped me combine those two things to figure out, okay, what are some companies that I'd be comfortable buying and holding for 10 years? Maybe I can find times when the stock is going to really appreciate and do very well with some call options.
Mhm.
And so that's sort of, I think, helped me formalize what I've done with Tesla in a
Yeah.
lot of ways too. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, that's kind of interesting that you had those examples, kind of like
Yeah.
because you saw a bunch of of accounts and people just do very
Yeah.
average or just like
Literally hundreds
disappointing.
of hedge fund clients, maybe 1,000 in my years there,
Yeah,
and disappointing. Yeah. Go on.
exactly. You're
Sorry.
just like, what's going on? But then you see the outliers, right? You're saying, wait a minute, why is this guy doing 10x or whatever, 50x or something crazy? And
Yeah.
you get to talk to them or see them, and you're like, like they're doing a different framework, a different
Yeah.
approach
I mean, that
completely.
was all like in 2006,
Yeah,
before I really invested on my own, but it
mhm,
seeded my
sure.
mind to later to see the opportunities with Tesla.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's interesting. Back in 2000, I think it was like 8 or 9, like in the early App Store. So there was it was kind of a smaller community back then, and we kind of like the early developers. We kind of knew each other or of each other's companies very intimately. And there's this one developer who had kind of like a hit game. He was a single developer. I forget the exact name of the game, but it was just a simple game, but it caught pretty much
Hmm.
a lot of people. And I read this article about him. I think it was 2009 or so, and it said that he had taken like $300,000 or something that he made in the App Store, and he had invested it into Palm. Palm, the company that was trying to compete against iOS. They had this like period where people were really exuberant about that company and its
Yeah.
chances,
Yeah. I remember that. Yeah.
and so he basically tripled his money within like 5 or 6 months, and he sold. Right,
Hmm.
and the article was
Smart.
just had this blurb like this guy took 300,000, and in 5 or 6 months had tripled his money by buying Palm stock and whatever. Right, and I took that. I'm like, oh, interesting. I was like, I didn't even
Hmm.
like. I think that was like a seed, that example, right,
Hmm.
of someone saying, okay, I'll take this and put it somewhere to, like double, triple, whatever, in a short period of time.
Yeah.
Um, that started to. I mean, it wasn't like, let's say, a complete direct teach me how to. It didn't teach me how to do it or what. It was just that slight seed of an example. And it kind of reminds me
Yeah.
a little bit of kind of the examples that you saw, that kind of he seeded the idea, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
definitely.
And another thing I've seen people do that seems like too good to be true is like a lot of people sell option premium. They sell like iron condors or
Mhm.
puts and call. It just seems like those returns are really good. It seems like that until there's like an unexpected crash, right? And then
Mhm.
those strategies get blown out of the water. And so those are that's that I see a lot of option traders gravitate towards that. Um, where they're like, oh, I can sell these calls and puts, out of the money and just make 10% a month or 5% a month consistently or whatever, that's pretty good. That's a great return annually. And it might work for a year or two or even three. I don't know. But it seems like eventually those strategies get really blown. So you have to be careful. Like some of these strategies, not, it's like what works in the past doesn't work in the future. Even the strategy I do now, with the call, this buying calls and disruptive stocks might not work ever again. I don't know. I mean, it worked for Tesla up to this point, but it might not work next time.
Hmm.
And something to be conscious of. The market's always kind of adapting and changing, and what worked in the past never really, in my mind, is guaranteed to work in the future, and oftentimes won't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One Twitter follower asked this question. Says some of us who are a bit younger, 26, didn't quite have the maturity to make big Tesla related bets as you guys did back in 2013. Do you think the new Apple, Amazon, Tesla currently exist? Where might they
hmm
be hiding? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, a great question. And I think you just got to look to the future. Like younger people, especially in their 20s, I think have a better insight to what the next 5 or 10 years are going to be like than we do. You and I, like younger people are using, I don't use Snapchat or, I barely use Twitter. I've gotten better at using Twitter. I don't use Instagram even, but there's all these other like TikTok and all these things and that are coming out, and I think younger people have a better sense. Hopefully, should have a better sense of which of these technologies are developing in what ways, and to think about, okay, in 5 years or 10 years, things are changing faster and faster. Is it possible Roblox is going to become like the metaverse or go that direction? Is that a possibility, or is Fortnite just going to destroy it and has no chance? So, or is that not even going to happen? Um, so try to think of what the world's going to be like in 5 or 10 years, and then invest now based on that. Don't invest on the next 1 or 2 years or what's hot for the last 5 years or right now.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I think, yeah, I definitely would see that. Like a lot of times I think if you take a step back from the noise of all these people saying this company, buy this, get gains right now. And if you take a step back and say, who's going to be like the decade winners of, the next 10 years, when we look back and say like, who just like killed it this decade, you know?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and there are different types of companies that will kill it. There will be the big companies, let's say like Amazon, right? Um, and um, and I think there's that trade-off where the bigger the company is, typically you have less reward but greater safety,
yeah,
So,
yeah.
I mean, it might fit what you're trying to do. I think my interest lies a bit more kind of in the other
100x return over 10 years. Yeah,
exactly. Well, yeah, actually, I actually don't even. I think sometimes the short period of time can be kind of maybe over ambitious or too risky in some ways. Like I actually I prefer the 10x over 5 to 10 years, and then
yeah,
and then doing it again, right? Like I think
yeah,
that's for me that's my personal sweet spot. Like finding
yeah.
that type of company.
It's a good way
Um,
to think of it.
yeah, but I think like um, those type of companies, they typically aren't going to be the large cap ones. So you've got to
That's
look
right.
in kind of these undiscovered, areas.
Yeah,
And the challenging part is like the companies, there's going to be a lot of massive confusion about these companies. There's going to
yeah,
be a very a strong diversion of beliefs. You're going to have people
yeah.
who love them, who hate them. And I think as a early or as a beginning investor, um, it's important not to get mentaled by all that.
Yeah.
Like to have this.
Yeah.
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
think early investors for sure. I agree. And market cap. You said the word market cap. There's so many younger investors out there that don't really even understand market cap. Like there's probably a bunch of people watching this that just look at stock prices, don't even really understand fully market
Mhm.
cap, right? So first you need to understand market cap, and then you also have to understand total addressable market. TAM is what people abbreviate. That was a key term for me too. Like think about what the total addressable market, not just right now, what you think it will be in the future for that company, and what that market cap of that company is now versus what you think that market cap could be somewhat justified at in the future if it's growing at X, Y, Z or X, Y, or Z rates, to get to that total addressable market. And the total addressable markets, you can't listen to um, financial analysts on that, like they get it wrong all the time. Look at EVs, right? Like they don't even understand self-driving total addressable market.
Hmm.
Like they get so much of it wrong. Like ARK investment is a good beacon, I would say, for sure, for a lot of this stuff for young investors to look towards and look up to. They have a lot of different stocks and ideas and good analysts, but understand market caps and total addressable markets and how they evolve, how total addressable markets evolve as industries change, and think forward about it. Don't think about what it's like now
Hmm.
and such. Yeah.
Yeah. I think one of the big challenges, or the biggest challenge I see in really finding the next, big winner, 100x, let's say, is I don't think the CEOs of most companies are putting themselves out there enough for
Yeah.
really like long interviews so people can really understand what they're really about.
Yeah.
And to me, I think that's probably the number one barrier, I think, in like discovering 100x companies. One example is like most people, when they do interviews, like go on a typical outlet or anything, it's like they're not really asking like the deep questions, They're not really prying to like, they'll ask
Yeah.
one question and move on to the next question, whatever. They're not like
Yeah.
following up on the person's answer. Like
Yeah.
if you want to really dive deep, you hear what the person is talking about and then you ask a question about that, right?
Yeah.
And you keep
Yeah.
on going. And
Yeah.
if you can go like 10 layers deep, like you're gonna come up with some interesting stuff. And like
Yeah.
to interview like that is just such a rare skill. Combine that with the infrequent type of interviews that most CEOs do of early, kind of cap companies, small cap companies. It makes it extremely difficult, I think, to get like this like deep dive on, I think, maybe on who can be the dominant, future players that are, let's say, under $10 billion market cap right now. And so,
Yeah.
I mean, that's why like one thing is like, yeah, I mean, I would love, it doesn't even have to be my channel, which I mean, I just want CEOs to be interviewed more in depth, like long, like deep interviews, right? Give
Yeah.
me
Yeah.
10 hours of a CEO, you know,
Yeah.
and a
Yeah.
person who's really grilling them for 10
Yeah.
hours, and
Yeah.
you're going to see a lot of stuff happen. Like that's going to be the best, in my opinion, like due diligence you're going to have right there.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but it's just not out there. I don't know what to say,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard. That's like maybe if you're sometimes institutional investors get special access to management of some of these companies,
Mhm.
but it's sort of unfair for, the regular public not to be able to see interviews like that in depth. And we see them on TV, but they're like 5 minutes maybe here and there for a
Mhm.
couple questions. Doesn't go in depth. Like I think your interview with the Lemonade guy, that
Mhm.
was really good. Looking forward to listening to the rest. I listened to the first. I got to listen to the rest of it. But um, to be honest, like I have, it's like I want to listen to it and with no mind, but I also have the natural contempt prior to
Mhm.
investigation, and that's
Yeah.
sort of been making me lag, and I've just been busy. But I want to listen to it. But the contempt prior to investigation is like, why is this guy interviewing with Dave if he's supposed to be some CEO of a company? But that's just my own
Yeah.
weakness, assuming that, because it doesn't happen often where a CEO is interviewing with someone.
Mhm.
But that's my own. I know that's my own shortfall, but I need to like listen to it too and
Yeah.
hear.
Yeah.
I value your judgment obviously
Yeah.
too. So
Yeah. It's like it's interesting. Like with Lemonade, um, it's yeah, it's like classic actually contempt. Like before
mm-hmm.
investigation, by a lot of people actually. And
I'm sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
and a lot of it is like I feel like there isn't enough interviews, in-depth interviews by the management. That's I'm trying to interview actually their co-founder as well and their CFO. But like I have some advantages in the sense of like the two things what I would suggest you but people to watch is like the interview I did with the CEO, but there's also an interview that um, Barclays did with the CFO at one of
Mm-hmm.
their virtual conferences. Um, but I think it's on still online. But that interview also it shows how they make money. It shows actually their unit economics, which they don't, it's not clearly communicated, I think,
Yeah.
in their company presentation, but the
Yeah.
CFO just nails it. And
Yeah. And so like my contempt prior to investigation is
yeah.
like, okay, that's a valid interview. I'll look at it and like be less skeptical because it was at a Barclays conference. But if you
Oh,
interview
sure.
him and he gave you the same answers, I would probably be like, I don't think it's true. It's something shady. You know what I mean? So
Got
my
it.
we all have these kind of
Yeah.
contempt prior to investigations we have to kind of get over on
Yeah.
evaluating.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, go on.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't tell people this, and I don't give like financial advice. I don't tell people buy whatever.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
But
Yeah.
like I tell my wife, I think our lemonade investment can be 100x.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna like.
It's one of those things that's a small probability. Maybe it works out, maybe it doesn't. But you know, you're
Well,
happy
I
with
think it's,
the
I
risk
think like,
reward.
yeah, I'm actually, I mean, this is my personal opinion because we got
Okay.
in at like about $54 or so,
Okay. So what was that
and
like a 3 billion market
yeah,
cap
it's
or
like
something
three and a
like that?
half or so.
Okay.
Like I think I have like a 70-80% chance that I do
Wow.
100x in 20 years with lemonade. Yeah.
Okay.
But
Wow.
I don't think people will understand it. I don't think people will like, they're just, because I'm just looking at it like different than any conventional or traditional way, you know?
Sure.
Like,
Sure.
I'm looking at it both, like, I'm looking at the quantitative, like the unit economics differently too. I'm like really trying to grill down and not just assume I know, like, because if you look at their thing, they give away stuff to charity, they have reinsurance, it just looks like a
Yeah.
mess, you know?
Yeah.
You have
Yeah.
to like
Yeah.
really drill down to understand the
Yeah.
quantitative. And then the qualitative looks like a mess too. It's like, how are these
Yeah.
guys going to disrupt insurance? They're just like, whatever, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's like, so I love it. I love it. I hate when the company like Lemonade starts to rally. I just like, oh my gosh, I'm like,
Because you can't get more
exactly.
before
I'm
it
just
goes
like,
release. Is that
oh
why?
my gosh, like I got like a decent position where it's gonna be, I think, significant amount later.
Yeah.
But I was like, oh, I was hoping this could stay down for another year, or
So you could liquidate some Tesla and then put it
or
in
so.
there or
Yes,
something. Yeah.
I mean, I still think Tesla and Elon are in a different dimension completely.
Yeah.
I mean, who can like think and execute like Elon is like is it's just hard to find another Elon, right? Um,
That's right.
but like there are opportunities, I think, when you go down to lower cap stocks. Like for example, insurance is like huge industry,
Yeah.
but who's the top like new company? Who's the top tech insurance company? Yeah,
I don't know. Yeah. Yeah. It's true. Like they're all just big behemoths that have been
yeah,
around forever.
like
And who's the
yeah.
top one?
I mean,
Yeah.
who has the most momentum? Who has
Yeah.
like the biggest brand? Who has the
Yeah.
best like management? Like to me, it's just. I mean, I might be calling it too early, but to me, it's so clear. Like
Hmm. Interesting.
it's Lemonade's game to lose. I mean, they're just way ahead of
I gotta
anyone in the
check it out
field,
closer. Yeah.
and um, yeah, I'm just sad that it like has almost doubled in like a month. I'm just like,
Yeah.
it's just frustrating. Um,
Yeah. It seems like there's so many good stock opportunities out
yeah.
there, and it's like, oh, my money's tied up in Tesla pretty much.
That's
So it's like,
yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's like I feel like like that's my problem right now. It's like because everything's like pretty much in Tesla, it's like it's an opportunity cost, It's like how am I supposed to liquidate Tesla and
yeah,
Elon to go into an
yeah,
inferior, you know, human
yeah,
beings company. You know what I'm saying? Like
yeah,
it's
yeah,
like
yeah,
different
yeah,
level here. And
yeah.
I'll do some because like, I see opportunity and I think it's a good learning experience. But yeah, my biggest problem is like there's a lot of opportunities. Um, like for example, I still think Starlink is mega
That's big, huh?
mega big. Like
Yeah,
I don't think people are catching the opportunity in Starlink. And um yeah, if I had a new portfolio where I didn't have anything and no tax, like whatever, I was just like starting out, let's say
yeah,
with X amount. Yeah, I think, I would definitely probably put like, a good 30% in Tesla, maybe like, 25-30% in Starlink.
or SpaceX
Or
through
yeah,
indirect
SpaceX
investment or
basically.
whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
through
So I'd have like,
SPV.
good 60% in Elon at least.
Hmm.
Maybe 60-70%. And then I would probably have about three or four other companies like Lemonade, and I'd find a way to get into Stripe,
Hmm.
and there'd be a few others like maybe Roblox and a couple others, that I thought
Yeah,
had good 10x potential in 5 to 10 years. But yeah, It's like,
You diversify more and have more, but you'd have like what, 5 or 10 companies maybe instead of like,
yeah, I think, yeah, I mean, it's,
it's hard to keep up with more than that for one person, in
yeah,
my
that's
opinion. Like
true.
in a,
Yeah. I
you
mean,
know,
in some ways, like, yeah, I just feel like, I wish I could just keep my Tesla shares and, have some extra somehow new money, to
yeah,
invest.
yeah,
But yeah, but I mean, I don't want to deal with other people's money personally. Like, yeah, I just feel like it adds too much complexity.
yeah,
There's a simplicity when I'm making my own decisions, and dealing with that. So I'm just
yeah.
happy kind of, with
That's
where I'm
true.
at. But
I mean, as we record this, I don't have any, I don't have anyone else's money yet in my fund. It's just my own money, so that's good.
yeah, yeah,
I'm under hopefully less scrutiny because of that. But yeah, in the
sure.
future, when I hope, when I start taking on investors,
Yeah,
I'm gonna have to be extra careful talking about actual like trades I'm doing and such. But it's fun talking about, the investing decisions we make and the trades, and
yeah,
hopefully by the time this third part video comes out, the S&P 500 Tesla trade will be even further on its way, but
yeah,
we'll see,
yeah,
but I think also that what I think about, an interesting concept I think about with investing, short term versus long term, is it's like sort of an analogy to quantum physics in a way, where if you dive into like the atomic level, then it's like, where's the electron? Is it here or here? Like it's unpredictable. You have no idea, And so like that's when you dive into like the microscopic level. And same thing with investing. Like if you dive into like the shortest time frame of like a day of a single day stock movement, the stock moves up or down, and people try to put stories to it, but a lot of times it's just unexplainable. It's just, herd moving in and out of the stock at a semi-random way, and we just can't predict day to day or even week to week, and sometimes month to month. But when you take a step back, from those atoms and you zoom back out, you're like, oh, that's a chair I'm sitting on. I know exactly what that is. Or if you take
mhm,
a step back to like 5 or 10 years out with Tesla, you're like, oh, that's the biggest company in the world in 10 years or whatever. Like you just know what it's going to be. And so I use that analogy a lot myself, just to kind of like help, you know that I can never really understand short-term price movements of stocks, and not think I can, because it's much more random than people realize. This S&P inclusion thing
yeah,
is sort of a rare find, in my opinion, where it's like, okay, you have 120 million shares that have to buy it, and you have all these benchmark funds that are now going to consider it, and
yeah,
so there's going to be a supply and demand change of the stock. But otherwise, other than that, week to week, month to month, their sentiment changes based on battery day or whatever, and you just really have no idea how the stock's going to move up or down based on those things.
yeah, yeah. No, I was telling my wife today. I was like, there's something about when you bet on timing, which
Hmm.
you need to with options, that adds like 10 times the stress, if not more.
Yeah,
I mean, maybe
yeah,
it's like 100 times the amount of stress. I don't know. But like,
yeah,
because I was telling my wife, I'm like, look, like the past few years, we're just in pure common stock. I mean, we have some options plays here and there, here and there, but there's just, not that much. But in terms of percentage, but I'm like, we're just so calm with our stock. There's like no timing element per se.
yeah,
It's just
yeah,
like, and I'm like, I think that's underappreciated. It's like there's something about that and I was telling my wife, like, when we're thinking about trading slash betting on timing, it just like boosts my stress level, through the roof.
yeah,
Where it's
yeah,
like, I'm like, whoa, is it worth it? I'm like, do we
yeah,
really need to try to get like extra 10x within, like for within like shave off,
yeah.
several years? Like, it's
And you
like,
could be wrong and miss it.
yeah,
And
exactly too. It's
yeah,
like, there's something about common stock in a great company in what I in it could be like, the greatest company in our generation. Like there's something about that where if you don't need to bet on timing, then, there's like a ease to it.
comfort.
Um
Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah. No, I
But
agree. And it was like in disbelief for like those 5 years leading up to 2019, where the stock was just kind of range bound in that
mhm,
like 180 to 300 range, and you just were like, oh, I held a lot of common stock for that time, which was good, but I was also buying some leaps every year or two when they were expiring and losing money. And I was trying to do both,
Hmm.
and luckily it finally broke out. But yeah, it was like the common stock was the much easier, less stressful way to do it than trying to rotate in and out of the leaps, every year or two as they were expiring, about to expire worthless. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I hear you. Um, all right, Emmett, want to thank you for joining me on this time. I know yeah, man, we've gone almost 3 hours. Pretty
Yeah.
crazy.
Crazy.
So
Yeah.
fun
It's
stuff. I
fun.
always enjoy chatting, and I always learn something new. And yeah, these topics, like I think what's cool is like these topics fascinate me. They're just like topics that I don't think are talked about enough, and I just like, um, yeah, it's fun to just you know, chat and to explore and to, see where things
Yeah.
go.
I agree 100%. Love doing these chats, and I'm sure we'll do more, and hopefully more exciting ones in the weeks to come. So
All right. Sounds good. All right. Take
good.
care, Emmett. We'll talk to you
All
later.
right. Talk to you later,
All
Dave.
right. Bye.
Okay.